Good evening. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much for making the time to watch the show. We totally appreciate your time. My name is Medri Nyambura. The show is called This is the Day. And being a Monday, we look at current affairs. So 12th of August was yesterday, and we were celebrating the International Youth Day. Well, for many people, there's not much to celebrate. And today we'll have that discussion with two gentlemen who are perfect to have this conversation. Literally prepare for a good time. So his name is Raphael, but because he's an established person, he's called Raphael Obonyo. He's an external advisor to UN Habitat Youth Advisory Board, and you're also the director of Youth Congress. The minute I have to check my notebook for titles, in Amanisha, you've made it my brother. And also have Arnold Maliva, who's the manager of Emerging Leaders Foundation. Karibuni sana.
Asante.
I was telling Arnold, today he looks so serious. The last time he was here, he was so chill.
Last time I was serious because I actually was dressed officially. Today I'm easy. You see, I'm just in a...
Okay, but I'm glad you're here. Raphael anavanga suti kila mahali.
Not always.
Are you sure?
Not always. We know.
He's a sweet person.
Okay, so today you switched places.
We switched places. So I take all the serious roles and do the other roles.
This one is a comedian. So let's get to the first thing that troubles most young people. Unemployment, and you've both acknowledged it in different platforms, and I think for me my worry is I feel like the government is so detached from what is happening when they come up with all these ideas. But I'll start with you, Raphael. How bad is it when it comes to unemployment, and why are we here?
I think, thank you so much and thanks for hosting us. Unemployment is one of actually the single most serious challenge affecting especially young people in this country today. If you look at levels of unemployment, especially amongst the youth, 70% of jobless people are actually youth. But that's not the only problem. The problem that we have now as a country is that we have educated but jobless. So these are not people you can just give any jobs.
Okay.
And the problem is so huge, and governments, and particularly our governments in Africa, but particularly our government, doesn't know how to deal with it. And so they are trying to do what we call, sleepwalking to the solution by creating a program here, a program there, kazi kwa vijana, and patchy programs. But these are not jobs that you can give to these educated but jobless.
Okay.
The jobs they are creating, they are really, small-time jobs, which are not for people who've gone to the university. So I think we've not been able to match the aspirations, desires, and the interests of the youthful population that we have with the programs that we are creating.
Okay.
And so that's a huge challenge.
Okay. Arnold, let me just follow up with this. I watched a feature the other day where the person in question is an entrepreneur who left the private sector to start this, it looks like a non-conventional thing to do. And he said categorically, the reason why young people don't have jobs is because wanataka maneno ya internet. So can we fault the young people for wanting to work for what they studied? Because they played by the rules, it's just that the system is not working at all.
First of all, I think that was an ignorant statement by that person, saying that young people just want internet-based or online-based jobs. I think is not only unfortunate, but quite ignorant. Because young people are out here ready to do anything.
Okay.
They are all over doing everything. But some of what they're doing, like what Raphael says, that there are young people who are educated but jobless. What he hasn't actually qualified is that we've got a lot of what we would call underemployment. People who are working poor. They are busy, wake up very early in the morning till late, but they still cannot sustain their own livelihoods.
Okay.
So there is underemployment even as we talk about unemployment. As in you are an engineer, but you are in the bank as a teller, trying to just make ends meet.
Okay.
So you are being underutilized, you are mismatch of skills. So literally we have not prepared as a country to take on the population we have. And by 2030, over 60% of our population will actually be at its peak, between 18 and 35. So they cease to be the youth of this country, and literally they just become the people of Kenya.
Okay.
So are we prepared? Hindsight tells us that probably we've not done so much. It doesn't mean like everything is so bad and we need to despair, but we can work towards that end.
Okay. Yeah. There's a Senator Raphael who once said that that the minute we killed our manufacturing industries and relied on imports is when we literally killed the opportunities for young people. And the government is keen with the Big Four agenda of bringing the manufacturing industry back. Is that a solution maybe that can work, in your opinion?
That's a possible solution. But whether we can create the kind of jobs that we need, because manufacturing now, I'm not sure we can, because you're talking about manufacturing, but we're not establishing any factories. So I'm not sure that is a solution for now.
Okay.
I mean, to create the many jobs that we need.
Okay.
And the problem also is that we have plans, but we put them in on the shelves, and then when the situation gets so bad, that's when we remove those plans. And you see them with the constructions. You see them when we are doing roads. We are implementing plans of 70s, 80s.
Yes.
Things that if we did then, they would have fixed the problem then and now. So manufacturing, I'm not sure is the solution for now. For now,
Okay.
I think we need to look at sectors like agribusiness, and see how we can ensure that we create many more jobs within the value chain.
Okay.
Not because manufacturing, if we say we want to set up an automobile maybe company here, we can't compete with
Japan.
Japan and all that. So it's a good idea, but not an idea for now. It was an idea for then.
Would it work long term?
Yes.
Okay.
If we think about it long term, but whether we have that long term vision is again another because we have all these ideas, but then it's an idea for we want to create these jobs within another 2-3 years. Manufacturing, I don't think you can say that. I mean, because it's something that you need to think 10-20 years from now. Yeah.
Okay. Arnold, the Cabinet Administrative Secretary of the Ministry of Public Service, Rachel Shebesh, is of the opinion that anyone who's closer to retirement should either be pushed out or sacked. And that should create opportunities for young people. Again, why is this a solution and who came up with it?
I will say that is reactionary, quite short-sighted and populist, because how many people are retiring anyway? We talk about 800 young people being pushed into the job market every year. And we're talking about some 20,000 people who should be retiring soon. That is not enough, because the government, even as an employer, does not employ 1 million people.
Okay.
So just because people do not look at these things doesn't really mean that some of those words being thrown around can actually be solutions. But then she has a point also on the other side, that we have got an aging civil service.
Okay.
So there is need of regeneration in the civil service, because largely at the upper, when you look at years, most of them are actually at the higher part of the ceiling, and we need younger people also coming in the civil service. And I'm thinking we do not really bring plans to work, but we have got bad plans and policies.
Okay.
Because if they don't work, they are not good. If they've not been if a policy cannot be implemented, then it's not good. Let us really not cheat ourselves that we have got good policies when they have never been implemented. You cannot be. And by the way, we are in an evidence-based world today. So the Majitu stories you hear about Zimbabwe came and took a blueprint from here and they implemented, those are lies. Those are white lies that guys are actually all over telling people. If you cannot implement it, why would I pick something that was meant to work in Kenya, Black Africa, and make it work in Singapore? As in, whom do we try to lie to?
Okay.
You can honestly
call them Majitu stories.
Majitu stories. Because we honestly shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
Even the Big Four, in the first place, for me, is a phantom.
Okay.
Because what is it based on? We are moving to Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution, where big data, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things are going to determine where manufacturing and the industry goes and industrialization goes. But we are here talking about stuff that cannot make sense.
Coal plants and everything.
So I would have a different opinion about the coal plant, but this is not for this particular show. So in manufacturing jobs, first of all, we decide what we want to do and tell young people to find space. Again, with all due respect, I think we take young people for fools. That we did a plan, we came up with Big Four and told young people, you can find space within Big Four. As in, how now? Where?
Okay.
we do not have even space for rhinos in this country. Where will young people find space?
But do you know they just killed it? I'm so angry at that. But let's stay on the course. Yeah. Rafael, the opinion that the government itself cannot solve the unemployment, and this you've mentioned before, and I think he's highlighted it as well. But you think the private sector can help? How is that?
I mean, first of all, government does not have the expertise, the capacity, and sort of the innovation that is required to create the number of jobs that we need. And like Arnold has pointed out, you realize public sector can only accommodate actually less than 20% of the jobs that are required. Other young people who are graduating every year, the formal sector can only take up to, that 20%. So I think a decent government, a thinking government will think of empowering private sector, because if you empower private sector by ensuring that there is ease of doing business, ensure that a private sector can function, create an environment through which private sector can thrive, that way we are going to generate a few more jobs, more than if government immersed itself into this process of creating jobs. And you've seen, for example, government is in the business of creating youth empowerment funds, youth empowerment programs, which they do not have. Yeah, they do not have expertise, they do not have capacity, they do not have the experience of managing those kind of programs. And even when they do that, they create only a handful of jobs, so they're not solving the program. And so I think what government needs to do is to partner with the private sector, empower the private sector, but also partner more and more with the private sector, because private sector has a way of replicating some of these programs, scaling them up. And so I think private sector should play more of a lead role, and more of a stronger role in terms of job creation. I'm yet to see, unless it's a country like China, where it is the government that is responsible for creation of jobs.
Arnold, yes, go ahead.
But on a contrary opinion slightly about capacity of government, I am yet to see a very able unit than government. I've had a few years in government, and even if it was at policy level, I know that some of the most patriotic people in this country are actually civil servants. Some of the most educated, well-able. It's only that the system in a way works to curtail some of those abilities, and some of very good brains are actually packed. And government uses a lot of money to train these people. The problem has been that everything that is aimed for young people, and it's about how we program, we do youth programs in this country. It is so much tokenized, it's so token-based, that for youth empowerment, it has, the end result must be money, somewhere, people signing somewhere to get money. Now that is where we get it wrong. Because when you think giving me money is empowering me, is not entirely true, because if you give me money and I had all of it for booze, then you've not helped me. All young people do not want to become entrepreneurs.
That's true.
All young people do not probably want to do tenders. All young people are not necessarily ready for kazi kwa vijana to go and dig trenches and be out there. All young people do not want paramilitary training. So you see that government does good thinking, but when it comes to implementing, it falls short of looking at the bigger picture. But the elephant in the room is that everything that is called youth has always ended up in a scandal in this country. From YK 92, NYS 1 has actually been around. We have seen NYS 2, and we can confidently say that we expect NYS 3 to be loading as we speak, because we don't think so much has been done differently. Youth Fund has got continuous scandals. They don't go away. So we have really, I think the way we focus on youth empowerment in this country and making it token-based is really where it is wrong. Yet young people have got more important, especially if you're looking at livelihoods, young people have got more other needs, areas, or other program areas that need to be looked into. For example, at the marketplace, I have always said this, you only take two things at the marketplace. You either take your services, that is where the skills that you have, if you are learned, and if you do not, you actually just take yourself, you take your body there and your energy, but it's skills nonetheless, or you take goods. Now, young people do not control the factors of production. They don't have land, they don't have plans to manufacture. So literally what one too many young people can provide are their services.
That's true.
So skilled services and allied, or whether it's unskilled. So area that is number one that is of need is actually access to quality education, skills development and training as number one. Because literally, when you show up on the stage that is the market, you need that.
That's true.
Two, you need access to markets. There are young people with a lot of good ideas. They've got good products. But then there are cartels controlling whatever sector they are in. They can't do that. But then what is government doing about that? Not so much.
Okay.
And access to information. Whereas we are online, like somebody said, you mentioned that young people want things that are internet-based. Young people can actually be online, know what is happening in the EPL, they know what is happening in Japan, but they don't know what their own government is doing for them. So rather than blame young people, can the government rethink about reaching young people and giving them helpful information? And then access to credit.
That's the toughest one.
You can actually have an idea, you have got a business idea, you want to do something, you've gone to school and you've got some capacities, you want to actually just make it as an entrepreneur, but you cannot get workable capital. So access to credit becomes a challenge because, of course, government tries to come in to say, we want to come in an area where the private sector cannot play, affirmative action like. But then they insist that that is for the working poor, like Uwezo Fund, Youth Fund. So when you put 10 young people together and you're giving them a first loan of 50,000 shillings. Now, these 10 young people can hustle on their own. Even if they were to send their relatives, please call me, all the 5 of them, all of the 10 of them, by end of the day, they'll actually have gotten 5,000 each from their own relatives. So they don't need really that 50,000. They will need much more.
Okay.
Sometimes they need skills to do that. Then technological transfer is still a big challenge. That's why Raf says that we might not be able to compete China and India when it comes to manufacturing. We do an SGR and we create 5,000 jobs for Chinese. And we have got millions of young people in this country who are jobless. I'm talking about millions. But then on just one program, we have got 5,000 expatriates coming in. And some of those things they are doing is to salute the train when they come in, to walk through that and to just look at people and walk around.
You need expertise to salute.
To do that. So you see, those are program areas that, for example, as China becomes affluent in India, the cost of production is likely to go high. So the world's workshop or factory is likely to get into the global south, which is relatively Africa largely, that is sub-Saharan Africa. And by the way, we are very favorable to take up that role. But do we have enough skills? What is the cost of power around here? You see how we play around with Kenya Power. How am I supposed to put up a plant to manufacture when power costs are up there? And it's just for guys who are using money like...
Arnold, I have to stop you because we need to take a short break and listen to some music. Let me tell you, Arnold is not a happy man in this country.
No, I am happy with my country. I'm very happy with my country. I just have a problem with a few people.
Okay. Let's listen to a song called I Sing by Victizi and Atta Once. Let me tell you, you can only have such a song, I Sing, if your name is Victizo and Atta Once, which is playing on Family TV, also live on Family Radio. And I'm still hanging out with Raphael and Arnold, talking about the state of young people in this country. And this topic gets Arnold very riled up, so I'll start with Raphael. So young people are very frustrated, and these are people I've had conversations with, they've written on blogs, and they say the money that's supposed to be for young people is being looted by these faceless cartels that we never get to know. And when people are arrested, we don't see quick convictions. And somebody actually compared it to this. There's a man, Daudi Nzomo, who beat up his wife, filmed it. That guy was arrested and sentenced chap. But in the case of NYS 2.0, we are still there, still following people. And young people have a sense of despair. So I'll ask you this. President Uhuru Kenyatta, is there hope of him beating corruption and actually doing something for young people?
First of all, I think, let me put it this way. Corruption is one of the greatest threats to our development as a country. And so if we don't deal with corruption, we can't create the jobs that we want. If we don't deal with corruption, Big Four remains a mirage. If we don't deal with corruption, we'll never make a progress as a country. And so we need to deal with corruption. That is one. Two, I think we call it corruption and it sounds really, really nice. It's actually theft, It's theft of public resources. And we know if it is theft, there's a way to deal with it. If it's corruption, we find a nice process, committees, a task force. But theft, if someone steals your phone, you won't negotiate with them. But if someone takes something that belongs to you, not stealing, taking, you can negotiate with them. So I think we need to see corruption for what it is. It is theft. The third thing is that we've normalized and institutionalized corruption. It's now so normal to be corrupt. We are heading the Nigeria way, where if someone helps you with a pen, they expect something from you. In fact, there was this study that was done, I'm sure you heard about it, by East African Institute, where over 50% of young people were saying, now they are, yes, but why is it so? Because people are concerned that the hard work does not pay anymore. Merit is doesn't matter anymore. Systems don't matter anymore. You know, it's about what you get, not how you get it. You know, and so unless we deal with that, then we'll never be. So it's about value system also. You know, it's about socialization. So unless we really think hard about how to fight corruption, it's not about arresting 1 or 2, 3 people.
You know, for the cameras.
No. That one won't solve the problem. And if you look at what is going on, so many people are involved, but you only arrest 1 or 2, 3 people. Of course, it's to demonstrate, but I don't think that is going to slay this dragon or monster, as we call it. It behooves us to start thinking about how do we re-socialize, how do we make sure we inculcate the right values. Unless we do that, I don't think we are going to make any headways. And what the president is doing in his second term, I think it's good late in the day, but I think we need to start somewhere, because the levels of impunity in this country is unbelievable. If someone can even just move a river to put up a building, you know, it's unbelievable. And so other people see that and think, oh, it's okay, I can also do it. And so before long it becomes a culture, and corruption is almost becoming a culture. But what is going to happen, we'll get to a point where people will start going for each other's throat, because it will be survival for the fittest. It won't be about merit, it will be about system, it will be about whoever gets it first. And that is the worst part. The other part is that we have a generation of young people that is also getting so frustrated. And they're seeing how much corruption is costing them. And so what is likely to happen, we have a generation that is likely to rebel against this other generation, and I think we might get some change from there. So I don't think I would give up, because I also know there's a generation that feels like so much has been taken away from them, that feels that their future is being destroyed by these people who are corrupt, and so chances are they won't follow the same route. They will rebel or revolt, and that we are going to have a new generation.
Okay, before I get to Arnold, there's something you've said that it will get to a point where if I give you for a pen, I ask you for something. So I saw these words where someone asked for change, and when they got it back, it was less than by 20 shillings. And when the person asked, they said that was tax for change.
yeah, but that's where we are heading to. If you go to Nigeria, I was in Abuja one time, and this guy helped me with a pen to fill in the form, and he was standing there the whole time. So I thought he's in a hurry, wants back his pen. So when I finished, I told him, thank you very much. And he said, oh, my brother, you can't just leave me like that. So I said, my goodness. And on the queue, these police ask you, oh, how was the visit? You say it was very, very good. Then he asks you, is there anything that is remaining? I said, and it's like that until you get, and you see that also in Kenya, where everyone, and that is the problem now with corruption. You see, before, it's not that corruption hasn't been around, but corruption was locked to a certain point. But now it's throughout the system, and so it's very expensive now. Corruption is very, very expensive, to an extent that, I mean, if you look at numbers now, it's costing us almost over 250,000 jobs plus every year. You know, because everyone wants a cut throughout the system. By the time you're done with everyone, it's big monies we're talking about. And that's why these days you don't hear millions, you're talking about billions. You know?
Arnold, do the thieves, as Raphael is saying, they're not corrupt people, they're thieves. Do they understand what they're doing to young people, and do they even care?
Well, I don't think they really care. But before we blame them, let us also look at the generation that brought them up. Or the people that gave them votes. You know, these people don't just show up. You know, the same system, or rather the same election process that gave a county somewhere a governor who is changing the whole county upside down and attracting foreign investments, is the same election that gave people a governor somewhere who would rather move a river, who thinks you can move a river and let the building stay. So for me, I think we shouldn't give up, we should not give up hope on devolution. No, not devolution necessarily, but democracy. It's only, but the democracy is not the best way. But then there is none other way that is better than democracy. So, for one, the family system must actually also be called to question. These people come from families.
That's true.
And if you see your son doing something that is not correct, and you do not protect him, you do not change him, then we end up with the kind of leaders we have. By the way, we deserve the leadership we have. we must just accept that we have got the leadership that looks like us. An old American said that we have seen our enemy and he is us. It's just a year since we did elections and we are complaining like we've been with this team for the last 20 years. 12 months ago,
you've shocked us.
These guys, 12 months ago, these very, very people were all around, and some of these people who are making noise will actually tell you off online. They will troll you. They will actually some of them will actually even beat you and stone you if you spoke against these people today.
Yeah.
They had all the options, but they decided to end up with the people they ended up with. No one forced these leaders on anyone. No one forced the kind of governor you have. And by the I think corruption is actually, for the last 1 month or so, the cost of corruption has come down. It's now cheaper. MPs are now not taking millions, they're taking 10,000. You know, you can actually see that is progress.
No, it's because there's very little now to stay.
You know, that is progress.
Now they're going for change.
That MPs no longer, MPs, you know, in the days of old, MPs will take millions. And now they actually are accepting 10,000, 20,000. You actually can see we are making progress somehow, even if it's just momentary. That is progress.
But now when they're done with taking the 10,000, you know they now go for
actually,
Exactly.
a taxi guy who drove me yesterday somewhere told me that there is a governor somewhere who is even taking as little as 1,000 from people.
Yeah, they want anything that you can.
Yeah, they are getting anything that is loose, anything that has not been tied on the floor, they are taking away.
No, but I know that means they want everything now.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it means that there is scarcity
It's
of
true.
free money.
Yeah.
It means that probably the efforts by the president are bearing fruit.
Okay.
All the loose ends are being tied up. And I think young people need to blame themselves.
Okay.
I know.
Why is that?
In any other platform, I would actually stand up and tell off anyone who tells young people that they need to blame themselves.
Okay.
Because according to IBC, slightly over 50% of their register are people between 18 and 35.
Yes.
Now, that is a clear majority. That is 50% plus one. Yesterday, the president told young people in Kisii that they should arrest anybody who is corrupt. The president of the Republic of Kenya, yesterday addressing young people on the International Youth Day, told them to arrest corrupt people. He is actually calling for citizen arrest.
Yes.
If you look at it symbolically, he is actually asking for support. I actually love what is happening, that some big fish are actually being arrested and you don't see demonstrations in the streets. We hope that is going to become the process, even as we arrest the bigger ones that are left in the system going on, so that we do away with impunity and be able to make use of the resources that are there for the good of the people. For the young people who are in leadership, that is where the big problem is.
That's the challenge.
Because they are not any different. Boniface Mwangi the other day did an article and said that he called out on a few young people he knew who were in parliament and told them, can we resist the attempt on salary increment? And they told him, no, we need this money. Partly because the society has turned leaders into ATMs.
Okay.
That the African leader, ever since the days of old, was a benevolent kind of guy. As in, if you go to the king, you leave something. And we are making the same mistake King Louis XVI did before the revolution in France.
Yeah.
Of course, he cried and said, oh God, forgive us, for we reign while we are young.
Yeah.
Youthfulness should not be an excuse for incompetence.
Okay.
Even Paul, the apostle, writes to Timothy, and says, I think, writes and says that let no one despise your youth. We have allowed people to despise our youth because, like the president said yesterday, some of you take money. He wasn't lying. We do not vote sometimes using sense. We vote by picking bribes. So corruption as is today, we are part and parcel of it because it starts at home. I've given this analogy before, that a man with a family of 3 children leaves 50 shillings for mboga in the house. Mama is in a chama somewhere. She doesn't tell him. So she takes 30 bob and takes to chama and then buys mboga at 30 bob. When the husband comes in the evening and sees the children fighting over the mboga 30 bob, he thinks, India 50, and because he doesn't go to the soko. When he goes to the office tomorrow, he's still a parent, and there's that parental feeling. He finds some 50 bob playing in the office, he swipes it to ensure that he tops up so that he takes 100 bob at home.
Yes.
By the time it gets to the accountant has to even that, so the accountant makes it 1,000. By the time it gets to the manager, when the math is not adding, it's 1,000,000.
Yes.
So it's systemic.
Okay.
The corrupt system, because these politicians go to church.
Yep, and they have.
There's
the
another
high
end
fees.
also. So from family to church. By the way, what happens in the king's court begins from the prophet's altar. There, is where the problem is.
Okay.
Because we also welcome them in and we wish them well, we anoint them and go around. So sometimes you really want to think, do we really have servants of God? Do we have clergies, or we just have got politicians and clever business people conversing around and masquerading as men of the cloth?
Okay.
There is also another place, because now, until the other day when the president became so hard on corruption, now that's when the church is actually speaking out boldly. Where were
Can
they?
you believe that? Yeah.
Where was the church
when
all this was happening? And they couldn't call them out. They were calling these guys for harambes, cleaning this money. So long as I take a bit of my offering that I have stolen somewhere to the altar, and it's accepted as a burnt offering or whatever way it shows up, then I feel the other money is clean.
Okay.
We need to call out these guys. We need to preach. Moral relativism as it is today in church is actually a big problem. That we have got preachers who do not just call black for what it is. We still have got a lot of grays, preaching the gospel that is grey, and that is not right.
Okay, I actually miss the church from the 90s, but we'll talk about that after we listen to the song He Will, and afterwards we'll also have a Switchfoot with a track as well. They are playing on Family TV. We're also live on Family Radio on this Monday when we talk about current affairs. And today we look at the state of young people in this country. And I keep saying we need a between the scenes episode for these shows, because this one is very funny by the name Arnold. And you touched on something on the article, which I think every Kenyan should read, the article by Boniface Mwangi, where he says the monsters created by voters. Yeah. People need to read that. But I'll ask you, Raphael, we have young leaders in parliament. I personally, my MP has never said a word in that parliament, ni sawa too. But for me, my worry is it's like they get in there and they're swallowed by this dragon and they just can't seem to get out. And you have a good reason for it. Why is that?
I think because when you get to parliament, there's a way the system is wired. And so you get in there, and if you do not want to follow what everyone else is doing, you have to rebel. And when you rebel, you are isolated. Okay. And when you're isolated, you become the lone voice, and you also don't get the other goodies that other people are getting. Okay. Whether it is money that is being dished out, whether it is, being accorded any privileges, you don't get that. So young people get in there, most of these youthful leaders, and they find themselves like they do not have the muscle to rebel. And they're also afraid that if they rebel, they're going to be isolated. But that's one bit. The other bit, I think, is, and across the world, leaders are becoming younger and younger and younger. We've seen, France, someone is 34, we saw, where was it, Austria, 31-year-old. New Zealand now has someone who is 37 at the very top office. In Africa, the same thing. And so there's the narrative of youth leadership, which is great. But youth leadership, I think, cannot just be based on age. I think youth leadership must be about vision, must be about values. So I think to just vie because the narrative is about youth leadership and because you are young, I think it's not enough. Okay. So most of these youthful leaders also, while I know the system is, they find very, very difficult to survive within the system, I think most of them also, the youth leadership is just about age. They do not have anything to do with vision. They do not have anything to do with values, and it's said that it's better to have an old bad leader than a young bad leader, because an old bad leader somehow God will save us from
what
them.
Are you saying?
No. If we were to go by but a young corrupt leader, a young bad leader, you're going to be with them for so long. And we're seeing with the youthful leaders that we have. Do you know Kenya? In the history of Kenya, we have the youngest National Assembly ever in the history of Kenya. 21% of members of parliament are now people who are 35 and below, very young. If you look at our Senate, they say it's the second youngest Senate in Africa. But I think the good story ends there. Because if you look at the fight against corruption, it takes the president to come out and say, hey, corruption is banned. All of them are just, all this time are just quiet. If you look at the issue of ethnicity, negative, if you look at blind loyalty, they are the first ones shouting the most. So I don't think the youthful leaders that we have are any different from the kind of leaders that we've seen over the years. And I think that needs to change. And then even if we got just one of them demonstrating truly that youth leadership matters, people are going to align themselves, are going to give them the kind of support. But none of them has come out to say, I'm a little different. I'm not just youth by age, but I have a vision. There are certain values that I espouse to. The people who are taking 10,000, I won't be shocked if I looked at that list and see 80% of them are these young members of parliament.
Member of parliament. Okay. Let me ask you, Arnold, is there space for good leaders in the future?
Space has always been available.
Okay.
And there's space at any particular time. The world has got an open door policy for anyone who brings in good business and who brings in good stuff. So, but then to talk about the solutions that are out there, we, for example, at Emerging Leaders Foundation, we know that Africa's problem, number one, is leadership.
That's true.
That's why at Emerging Leaders Foundation, our business, we concern ourselves with creating the next generation of African leaders. And we've actually have had a very good number of partners, like Bible Society of Kenya at the moment. We've just realized that we decided that rather than keep on talking about bad leadership, and like Miles Monroe used to say, that everything rises and falls on leadership. So we say at ELF that we fight poverty with all our strength, but by creating good leaders, value-based leadership, and that's what we do around there, because we realize as much as we want to complain about these bad things, there is no critical mass of young people who are prepared. By the way, sometimes we get it wrong by thinking that bringing in younger people, we bring in new leadership.
Yes.
We do away with vices.
Vices
are not age.
Yeah.
Vices are not age-based. There are still crooked guys who are very young.
Yes.
And some of the serious crooks we have in this country are surprisingly very, very young.
That's true.
So being a young person is not a qualification for leadership in the first place.
Okay.
It does not even earn you the entitlement to leadership. That's why for us, we work to create them. Value-based leaders, people who know where they are going, and they have got Africa at heart. Locally, you look at what we have, and you realize that our biggest problem has been parties. Parties should be the nurseries of reason, nurseries of leadership. But our parties are personal properties owned by either family and friends. So literally people who come in are simply in there, they are washed and ensured, they go through to do some other work. Okay. So the space exists because there is need, there is demand. The problem is that there are people in this country, and literally all of us know that we are hungry, and we don't know food when we see it. We want good leadership, but we do not know good leadership when we see it. So it's up to us to create a critical mass of good leaders who will actually ensure that they tell people that we are good leaders and end up doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that is very, very important, because I think, the work that ELF is doing is extremely important, because part of what is happening is that we lack positive examples. Things are so bad that everyone feels like it's just okay to be bad. Okay. Let me join the masses. So I think that idea of creating some positive example, building some positive example, building leaders that people will look at and say, that guy drives a Vitz, but he bought it. He earned it. It's better than someone who is driving has parked six Range Rovers, but he stole money meant for a development program in a constituency or in a county. And so for me, I think that is important, because if you look at Mo Ibrahim, every year they normally identify a leader who has demonstrated good leadership in terms of they have some indicators there. They are always struggling to get this one leader that they can give. Yeah. And so I think, and one time I was arguing with Mo Ibrahim, and I was telling him, instead of looking for a good, spending a lot of resources and going through a lot of processes to identify a good leader in Africa, why don't you invest in building young leaders, new leaders? And I think what ELF is doing is exactly that, which is extremely important.
There's also the advantage in the awarding scheme, that it encourages African leaders to do good work.
Okay.
Knowing that the world appreciates, because what we have heard so far is that the world does not appreciate leaders past that. And especially in the global south, we have got a problem because people do not have post-presidential ambitions. So in the US, of course, Barack retires and he goes out. By the way, Barack gave us a shout out while he was in South Africa.
Yes.
So you find Barack has got business he's doing after being president. In this country, you are not so sure.
Politics is an occupation, you want to be president for life.
You don't know what former President Mwai Kibaki is doing at the moment, much as he's in old age. People are already thinking about pulling what it's being called Kaputini, because they feel Uhuru Kenyatta is too young. If he retires, they are asking us he'll go where. And I'm like, kind of...
Go run the family business.
So at that particular time, I'm thinking the award scheme as run by Mo Ibrahim is still important.
Yes.
But other organizations, families back at home, a good leader comes from a good child, comes from a good member of the church, comes from that good member of that small group you are in. So it should be our business. But then we are not any different from our leaders. I need to repeat that a crocodile can only be a leader of other crocodiles.
Yes.
There is no single day you're going to find a butterfly leading bees. So, and democracy is like milk. The best comes on top. The best in milk is the cream. It comes on top. So what we see out here, that is the cream. We might not be corrupt, but we are corruptible. That is the cream of this society.
Our cream, man.
At least you realize how bad that is. But at least, Rafael, now you see, it's important that we tell ourselves the truth.
Okay, allow me to give you time. Rafael.
No, but I also think good. First of all, leadership does not start with elective positions.
Okay.
I think people must realize that. My mom says that you will be up there who you are down here. If you're not doing the right thing down here, even if you are given what post, if you're a presenter at Family TV in Nairobi and you're not passionate, you're not committed, you're not devoted, even if you got a position in
Speak it into life.
in New York, and you're given a big position in New York, and if you're not motivated here, if you're not passionate here, you'll still be the same person there. Nothing will change. It's only the stage that will change, but you won't be any different. That is one. But two, I think the problem that we have in Kenya also is that good people are not coming out to offer themselves for elective positions.
Okay.
Maybe because electorates are not giving them a chance, or maybe because politics is too expensive or it's too dirty. But I think my encouragement is, what I've been trying to encourage is people who think they have the values, they have the vision, should also fight so that light gets rid of darkness.
Okay.
Someone like Maliba cannot be monitoring leaders, He should be in those positions himself. So why because we can't be monitoring and complaining about bad leaders. Yet we also know of good people who should be occupying this position.
Gentlemen, we are literally out of time. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing with young people. I'm waiting for 2022, by the way. I'll be watching. And Rafael, I think your story is nothing short of amazing. People should catch it. It's online. But thank you, gentlemen, for the time. And maybe to the young person, be encouraged today. All hope is not lost. And if you take action, participate actively in what's happening in your community, all the way to the national level. Thank you so much for watching the show. My name is Medrin Nyambura. Have a good night.